Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Touching the Edge. What a great day this is today. What a great day it is to find a way to shine into the world in a way that makes the world a better place, rather than a world that ends up becoming a darker and more grim and really a more negative place. And so here we are touching the edge. We're in this culmination. The end is the beginning, and recognizing that as we're moving into this great unknown, which is a new beginning, we have the possibility of ending elements that really don't work for us anymore. It's really important for us to recognize that some things that worked for us in the past don't work for us anymore. And one of those things I really feel is that at some point, we often, many of us, and we see this happening all around us, really have gotten caught up in the whole relationship to resentment, that somehow resentment is something that we really dedicate ourselves to. And I think it's worth taking a look at. You know, this resentment, it's almost like a color. Resentment is almost like the color red. Now, there's shades of red. So one level of red, maybe a bright red, maybe a pinkish red, might be irritation. And as you go through the spectrum of color into a darker hue of red, you step into anger. And there's a certain point when you step into resentment. Now, we can have resentment with all kinds of people. We can have resentment with our family. We can have resentment with different people that we come in contact with. And as that gets deeper and deeper, suddenly that resentment becomes darker and darker, a darker shade of red. After a while, there's a certain point where it's no longer an irritation, but almost a form of hatred. When we have a radiant resistance and a radiant resentment, that we end up being resenting that individual or that group around us at any time. And the darker that goes, it becomes like a crimson, a deep crimson red, all the way to that resentment getting to the point where it really is a form of hatred. And that hatred is like a dark red it's completely black. And so what I want to suggest is that this radiant resentment ends up shining in everywhere we go. We end up finding people that we can resent everywhere we go. And in fact, when we're in that relationship to resentment, we're just setting ourselves up to be ready to dislike that person, to be angry with that person, to judge that person, to shame that individual. And I want to suggest to you that resentment is actually something that is damaging to ourselves. It's a wound. It's a wound that we actually end up applying to ourselves. When you're resenting, you're really replaying old tapes in your head, old messages in your head. And every time you play them, your nervous system is feeling this as though it's for the first time. This resentment feels anger in a way that almost feels that the person has done something right now that feels disrespectful and something that we really need to be really directed in a real poisonous way against. And so I want to suggest to you that letting go of this resentment is absolutely pivotal. There's no reason for you to hurt yourself to get over on somebody else. If you are recognizing that fact, you end up realizing that we want to let go of resentment, not because of the other person not deserving it, but because we ourselves don't deserve it. Resentment changes our relationship from our authenticity coming from inside out, and it makes that kernel of resentment the center of our being. Your authentic self is deeper than any resentment that you have. Your authentic self has a sense of mission that's not reactive to anyone else. Resentment is a reactive state, and it's a state that keeps us trapped within it. So I'm asking you to be aware of this radiant resentment and how it changes your reality, and really making sure that you realize that one of the most important things that you can do for this world is to let go of resentment. It doesn't mean that we don't set limits, but we don't keep telling ourselves the same stories over and over and over again. It's really important that we recognize that our thoughts plus our emotions are what ends up being how we manifest where we want to go, and not where we want to get away from. When you resent something, you're stuck on it. It ends up becoming part of your life. It's like someone who says they don't like peanut butter but eats it all the time. So I want to encourage you again, let go of resentment. Resentment is a pattern that is rhythmic. When you are resenting, that means that you are in a rhythmic way repeating the same stories over and over and over to yourself, creating the same images that you replay in your mind to justify how you feel and your behavior. Resentment is never going to get you closer to who you want to be. Resentment is one of those things that does, again, that element where we end up becoming less ourselves rather than more ourselves. So be aware. Resentment is the path to you becoming someone that you really are not wanting to be. Resentment is the path for you becoming your least self and not your best. So let us know what you're doing. We're coming to the end of this 40-day practice. What are you doing to create a relationship that allows you to see possibility rather than staying stuck in conflict? I'm going to ring the bell. I'm going to ask you to listen carefully. Here we go. So basically there's two different options. One, and they're both radiant. One is delight. Delight is inner light that shines out. It shines from your heart and from your face. When you're delighted, you shine. And one is resentment, which is also a type of dark shining that ends up creating a world that is much more negative. I bring my hands together and I bow to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for extinguishing this radiant resentment. Thank you. Namaste.